Hello and welcome to Tavern Talks. This is episode 60, and am I excited for tonight? Tonight, we have the opportunity and the pleasure to have the amazing, almighty Alphinius Goo over there piping on
Well,
his.
I don't know about the almighty, but hello,
Well,
James.
magnificent. We'll go with that. But no, this is interesting because we we've been doing this amazing show for now 60 episodes, and it kind of dawned on me just last minute that the man that I normally write for and stream about and all that stuff we've never had on the show. So tonight is that repercussion to get all that.
Probably intentional. You didn't want to screw it up,
I mean, that's true. You're right. You don't bring the big guys on the show right up first couple episodes and then completely just
No, I didn't want to screw it up. That's what I was saying.
Oh, you're fine. You've had your practice though too with Good Mornings IFA, so I know
I have. It's marvelous to be with you, James, and congratulations. Truly, I brought a little wine down. I don't drink too much, but I do every once in a while. Cheers to your 60th episode, and congratulations to the Misfits and all the things.
This is my drink for the night. I'm out of alcohol here at the house, and
okay, water is good.
The wife has informed me that she wants us to cut back a little bit. So I was like, that's fine. We can do that. So every couple episodes, you'll see me with a drink on Tavern Talks now, not just every once. So I enjoy my weekly beer, but tonight I'm going to drink water. So for everybody who doesn't know, Tavern Talks, our main focus here is to improve and enhance gameplay, both as a game master and a player. And what better... Marvelous. I'm sorry that the healthiness is kicking in. I've got to get back better in shape. It's just getting to be the holidays, and there's already going to be too much overeating and stuff like that. So I got to cut back where I can. So, Alan, you fantastic man, you. Oh, thank you for the subscription, Alphinius. Appreciate
17 months in a row, my friend.
17. That means I've been running this. Oh my goodness, 17 months. Woo. We're coming up on 2 years here, people. Look at that. It's exciting. But what I was saying is this is why GUI Cube caught my interest, is because my goal, both as a game master, as a streamer, as a content creator, is to give people tools and information that improve their gameplay. I did this because of such the passion that I drove from it after being in some very dark places in my life, and this kind of pulled me out of those. And then hoping that I can give something back to the community. So I'm curious. We ask our guests this every time they come on the show. I want to ask you 3 questions. One, what, if you can remember, because I know it's been a few years since then, your first experience with Dungeons and Dragons, what kicked off that interest?
Well, so I had been farting around I was in my teens, and I could drive, so I have to think about the timing of that. It's about 40 years I could drive. So in fact, it's more than 40 years. So I could drive. And
you don't have to say the full.
I had a friend named Steve, and I'd been playing tabletop war games, Avalon Hill, as well as other sorts of those kinds of games, right, which were quite popular at that time. And he said, "Hey, have you ever heard of Dungeons and Dragons?" And I said, "Yes, Steve, I have heard of Dungeons and Dragons. What are you asking me?" He goes, "You should come and play with us tonight." And so we went and played. And my recollection, there's a good pipe tonight. My recollection is that that it was Dark Tower that was the adventure that we were playing.
Okay.
And I ended up playing with them from like 7 o'clock until like 3 o'clock in the morning.
That sounds about right at that age.
And so it came to my mind that this was fun, right? So I began playing with them consistently,
Right.
and Greg, who was our game master at the time, was magnificent, and truly was magnificent. He had learned from another game master, who I really believe that both of them and ultimately all of us really we began to get before our time. Right, we began to do things and innovate the game for ourselves. That really made it a lot better. But it was great fun. I played the white box first, and that was the rules that we were using. Then right around that time, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons came out, and the books and all of that kind of stuff. And
Right.
that my friend is history.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I didn't know what Dungeons and Dragons was, and I had realized it years after that my grandfather actually we had the old board game where everything was these little card forms, and you could just the dungeon was just set out and you could just place your stuff where you wanted, and that was it. And I did not understand anything of what that was. But years later coming back to the game and being like, that's what I was looking at. I was, in the house. But yeah, no, my Dungeons and Dragons didn't come until I was late teen as well, which is
I don't know how I started that damn thing. Hold on, I have to shut this damn thing up. Oh, I
what'd you
apologize.
what'd you start up?
I'm actually trying to put up a little post to invite people to come join us uh, in this marvelous stream you're doing. So give me a moment here. As camera Mandy says to me all the time, vamp for time, James.
Vamp for time. Well, I can definitely vamp for
And
time.
then
That's
I'm gonna
for
bring this little
sure.
post.
Yeah, we have one of our friends in here. Uh, wow, that's a interesting name, Shitty Mini. He said Grognard, which I was like,
Oh,
actually,
oh God, I am
it's actually the
unequivocally.
shirt I've got on. I'm not a full grognard. I consider myself an honorary grognard. I've done a lot of reading into second edition and areas of like that because I personally loved some of the reading that came out of second edition. It wasn't uh, the extra amounts of lore that they added to second edition was incredible, and third edition as well. And it's kind of where I'll dive back into to learn a little bit more if I'm curious about a certain monster or an area, especially if I'm diving back into things like Faerun or um, Ravenloft, great yeah, and I'm gonna mix up some others because my brain's scatterbraining at the moment. Uh, Greyhawk, Ravenloft, those worlds, they really fleshed those out in second and third edition, and now it's oh, hey Donnie, what's happening, man? That's that's who that is. It's good to see you,
Hello,
Donnie.
hello, Donnie.
Can't wait to see you guys at Genghis this year in February, and I hope you guys had a wonderful con just a couple weeks ago.
And
So
I do have to say this, James. I had a feeling he was talking to me. Yes, but
yeah,
look at
oh, I figured he was talking to you too.
look at
Thank you,
look at your shirt
Ace,
real
as
quick and
well.
what it says, James. Look at your
It's
shirt real quick because it says Great
it's
Gooey Grognard, but look at what it says underneath because this is very
yes,
important.
welcome, welcoming, totally fun, only grumpy sometimes. It's
Yes, because
interesting.
we are not the typical Grognard. Yes, this was very important. Yeah.
Yes, no, we actually, like I said, this was one of those things where uh, you say it that way. I call myself the honorary one because I played in the desert when I got back into fifth edition. The I played an angry, grumpy dwarf. That's what I played. He was, and part of it was because it was the only character I could get into in the desert. And when I say the reason I say that is because they would wake me up because I worked night shift. So I would sleep during the day. And then at 6 o'clock at night, they'd knock on my door and go, "Hey guys, it's time for D&D." So I'd crawl myself out of bed, grab dinner, and then go to the area where we would play for 6 hours and just grind through it half asleep for the first 2 3 hours. So and then the character became the grumpy dwarf, and that's how That's how I came back
Thus the tale
to
is
come up
told.
with it.
Yes.
That is the tale that is told. You're right.
So can I do
Yeah,
this real quick for Donnie because I
sure, go for it.
because Donnie and Andrea, of course, run this marvelous Tacticon, which is a more of a wargaming convention, but they also, of course, run marvelous Genghis Con.
Yes, they
And
do.
Genghis Khan is in February and end of February in Denver, and lots of gooey people show up. Yes, James, I think you are coming again. Yes.
Oh yes, I will be coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a wonderful convention. It is not overly large. Some few thousand people. I think the 2,500, 3,000. Or Donnie, how many is it? Is it 3,500 or so? And lots of great games. And I think we're doing the Great Gooey Dungeon Game Show again there. And yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun at Genghis Khan this year again, and I'm very much looking forward to it. In fact, Donnie, I'm announcing it right now. So I have a plan. My plan is to create some kind of an adventure called the Great Khan or something like that. Yes, and I want to put you and Andrea into that adventure. So we're going to have to get busy because it is already September. So I want to do this. I will be bugging you about it soon.
Donnie says like 16,000 or so. But he's just kidding. The Great Gamus Con.
Yes, it is really a wonderful convention.
Yeah, no, yeah, Genghis Khan. Meeting Donnie and Andrea, and I have a funny story about Donnie because the first time we had talked, right before I headed out to Genghis, our goal was to meet up, have a drink, and we hung out throughout the entire weekend and talked about gaming and all that fun stuff, but we never actually had a chance to sit down or took time to sit down to have a drink. So that is my goal for this year, is to sit down and have a drink with Donnie. So now we might have done one as a group though, because we did do quite a few group outings, so there is that.
Yeah, we did some drinking and chatting last time, didn't we? We sat up late and talked about people don't know the tale, but you'll see it in Magica. So we were talking about what the world was made up of. Yes, James, this is what we were discussing.
Yes, we were. We were talking about the world that's made up of D20s.
Yeah, so all of these are called alemic fractals, and they are little pyramids, right? And they are little pieces of earth, air, wind, and fire, right? This is what they are. And the alemic fractals come together in sets of 20 of them to form alems, and the alems attach on certain faces to form all the matter in the world of Xiothea and the Eterniverse. Yes, so this is the truth, that the entire world of Xiothea is made up of 20-sided dice. Yes.
So now I'm frightened by that though, because you said it's 4 elemental points, the elemental fractals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you're telling me is actually Xiothea is made up of an unlimited amount of D4 die, and that's frightening because then I'm going to get hurt.
Well, no, they all come together to form the alemics. So
yeah, so if you take enough D4s and you shape them all around, they build a D20.
You get what's called a icosahedron. Yes, I believe is what it is correct, is an icosahedron. And the icosahedron then forms all of the matter that is in the Eterniverse. And of course, it is all powered by the Xanthus. So this is what we call fantastically plausible physics. This is fantastically plausible physics. Yes, this is what we tried. Yes.
That's so crazy. And I can remember this because this isn't 1 or 2 people sitting around talking. We had like 12 or 20 people sitting around this one area, each with a drink in our hand, and we're all sitting there talking about the physics of Xiothea, this magical place that we all live in. So getting back to my question, so you've answered, well, technically you've answered 2. You've answered how long you've been playing and when you started. Now, what was the moment you decided that Greg was a great game master, but it was time for you to take up the mantle?
Well, Greg wanted to play. Well, actually, the way it worked was we had to we all game mastered.
You kind of did like a round robin type. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's the best way to learn, truthfully.
Yes. Well, there was Dirk, and he also game mastered, and Jim. And so Jim and Dirk and Greg and I primarily game mastered. And And it was quite amazing. It was what do you call it? Eye opening, right? And Greg and I spent a lot of time talking about game mastering. And
Whoop, we lost him. The wizard vanished, guys. Can't wait for him to come back, and then once he comes back, we'll pick him back up here. But yeah, no, we now have. It seems we've talked about it so much. The Shadow, you brought up the idea of xanthine proton decay, and I think he just decayed away. He's gone. But a wizard will, I'm sure, be back here shortly. In the meantime, for sure, make sure if you have questions about Xyothe, about GUI Cube, about D&D in general, toss those things up in the comments. That's why we're here. We're here to answer your questions. If you want to make me play goofy sounds, we're sending those out through Sirenscape, our all-inclusive soundboard, and we love these guys. Yeah, play all the sounds. You can use those. You can do that by going to the Misfit marks down at the bottom. And while we're still waiting on him, if you haven't yet, please follow. And if you would be very generous, subscribe. And it helps us out, keeps this channel going. And I think we've got him coming back here in a minute. So, ooh, sad trombone. All right. Waiting on him to come back, and nope, no sound. He'll be back, promise.
not now.
There we go. And the wizard's return.
So I think what happened was I was streaming Twitch on the other thing so I can say things in the comments.
Oh, yeah.
It overwhelmed my internet.
Thank you, Shadow. Appreciate that, buddy.
So yes, no, I've been a subscriber for 17 months now. So
yes, you have. One of our oldest subscribers.
I am old. So anyway, we were talking about Greg and we were talking about Jim and Dirk and
yeah.
me, right? So we sat around and talked about all these things that we loved, right? And then a marvelous thing happened along this early time. There was a little thing put out called Waterdeep in the North by marvelous Ed Greenwood, right? And I don't know, many who may remember that or may not, but it gave us just an entirely different perspective. And if you've been reading the Dragon magazine, you got all this perspective on a really amazing world, right? Which was this thing called the Forgotten Realms.
Right.
And so then we began to expand our own world. And what ended up happening was Greg and I were pretty good game masters, both of us. And the other guys liked playing more. And so it ended up being mostly Greg and me, right, who were doing this, right? And then what it evolved to was we actually had a campaign which we placed in the Forgotten Realms. Mm-hmm. And those who know the Forgotten Realms, up in the more northerly portion of the Sword Coast, was goodness gracious, what was the name of that doggone place? Anyway, it was not the best place, but that is where he placed the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. And that was sort of the contrast with Waterdeep, because we didn't like the idea that Waterdeep was this all-powerful city, and we wanted all this conflict, right? And so he began to game master there, and I began to game master in the Waterdeep area. And we would have all this stuff we would throw each other curveballs. So he had this wizard named Vester Ilnuz, who was our main NPC. And he was a bumbling buffoon, and he would sometimes not really do good things. He had to make will checks and all these kind of things to be able to cast spells. Otherwise, he would cower in fear. All this stuff. Well, I made a wanted poster that he was wanted for murder in Waterdeep, because I wanted to see what he would do. Right? This was the first that we did it, and then from that point on, it was on. Right? So my character was Mathar McGillen. Right. Okay. And he actually was an NPC in my adventure. Right. So we're up there in the city state, and we meet Mathar McGillen and his pal Beric Strongarm, but they are not really Mathar McGillen and Beric Strongarm. They are the fake Beric Strongarm and Mathar McGillen imposters. So it began to become, it took very much a life of its own. It was quite marvelous.
Yeah, no, I bet. And like I said, that's really cool, because that's kind of the the background. Like a lot of people don't realize where, because I know you and I've talked about this many times, is it's kind of how Xayathe started to develop. It was your customized version of Forgotten Realms, which then continued to manipulate and change. And now we have this amazing world of, I don't know, what do we see? What did you see last week in the den? 1,900 people?
Yeah, we're almost 2,000 folks. We have over 500 in the Contributors Guild. There are over 200, not counting the Goo Crew. There are
Right.
over 200, I believe, of our people who have portraits. Do you have your portrait handy? You want to show it to people?
I do have my
Yeah,
portrait. Let me
so
toss it
we have
off
over
to
200 of our
Eric.
people who have put characters in the world of Xayathe who are NPCs, and a ton of them are going to be in the Gloomport box and in the Darkenhaven box, which we are getting on to. I mean, we're getting close. I know we are late, but I think everyone is very pleased with the materials we've been putting out. And that those portraits, those NPCs are all going to be in these boxes for people to interact with, which I'm very excited about. I believed for many years now, probably 15 years, that there really was the possibility of making a collaborative world where lots of folks could contribute to it and be a part of it, and not have it just be 3 or 4 people sort of in an ivory tower making a place, right?
Yeah, and you told me that a long time ago that there were a lot of people that thought that that was impossible.
Well, it's a bit painful. I'd be lying to you if it was not.
Oh,
right?
oh yeah, no, I agree. It can be painful. Um,
No, only I want to say that the right way, because that came out wrong. So the issue of it being a little bit challenging, right, is that
right.
you are working with a lot of amateur authors, right, who have wonderful ideas, but maybe their writing isn't as polished as it needs to be, right, or maybe they haven't dug into the lore as much as you need them to really contribute. And we are able
Yeah.
to we figured out a way to do editing and do that stuff so that we can have those folks participate, which is wonderful. And Magica is the most extraordinary example now at this point, because of how many contributors are in there, and we have essays from I think 15 or 16 of our marvelous
Oh
folk.
wow.
Yeah, it is really it is something else. And wait till you see it, James. Wait till you see it.
Yeah, it's like I said, normally I get a glimpse and I am excited because I have not seen much of anything of that one. So that one's been kept under lock and key. Now, I remember a time, it was not too long ago, I guess you would say, that I used to be the one that I would always get yelled at because I would randomly, they would be doing stories or talking, and somehow I had access to getting into about any channel. And I don't think that's the way anymore, but
You can't get
I
into
just,
channel.
no, I can get into some of the channels. It was just funny because every time you'd be talking to somebody in a chat room, you'd be like, I would just pop out of nowhere, and you'd be like, "How did you even know I was on?" I'm like, "I don't know. I was just floating around." But no, I did toss a couple. Eric, if you want, if you can throw up a couple of the portraits up there. I tossed, Zixgramis, Zoldothrin, uh, Miss Goo, Lokabut, Carrie, myself. Apparently, I have like lost your image, but I have it somewhere.
I think many people have seen my image. It is okay. They're seeing my face right now, right? So it is fine.
Right? Yeah, no, yeah, but no,
But
I really do think they did an amazing job, and the fact that you've had it. Not only are you collaborating with writers, many times you're collaborating with artists.
indeed, no. Listen. This is part of our mission, right? Is
Right.
that there are lots of artists out there that have not been discovered, and most of them, when they get approached for discovery, it is, "Hey, will you do this for us for free, and we will expose you," right? And we have never
Hmm.
done that, not since our beginning, and that comes and that comes from my roots as in my real life job, which is being a creative director in the advertising world. And
Right.
creative people deserve to be compensated as best as you can do, right? And so we try to pay pretty fair market rates for our artworks, and And as you know, James, I think we pay pretty fair market rates for our authors, even if they're not
Oh
really
yeah.
people who have been exposed, right?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I get the opportunity to write The Witch's Wrath this year.
Which is
And
marvelous, by the way.
it was a challenge. I'll admit that though. Like I tell people that all the time I write adventures weekly for multiple groups sometimes. But sitting down and writing a full adventure that you're fleshing out for an exorbitant amount of people to read and write and to run, the challenges came out of the woodwork at times. And I thought that was it was a very humbling experience, but I was honored to write it. And the feedback, I was blown away. Genghis Khan, or not Genghis Khan, but Gen Con, the game masters that ran it, I was so excited to hear everything that they did and the touch ups that, because I'm a writer, but I'm not a published writer. I'm not a very good writer. I'm an okay writer. So I will, but the editing that was done in it was fantastic. And thank you guys for all the extra follows tonight. The love. This is. Please come back every week. We really are trying to make this an amazing channel where people can learn from all sorts of people. Yeah, we know that bringing out Phineas Goo is like the cream of the crop, but we're hoping to continue to bring these amazing people onto this show to learn about things that and to share off their passion. But no, Josh is, since his picture's up real quick, I have to have an honorable mention to this man right here, because without this man, I would not know what GUI Cube is. So Josh was my introduction to GUI Cube, and he was a fantastic introduction, and him and I are great friends now, and that character is truly a frightening NPC.
Yeah, so Dothrin Vildreen is one of the supreme consorts in the land of Valandia, right? And when we went down this road, I really wanted a number of really bad cultures, right? Culture, that are not good, right?
Right. And I think you've pulled a lot of historic culture into a lot of these as well. And I think that's very cool.
Yes, this is the goal, right? We want to, so Verdestia, which is the first continent that we have explored, is kind of traditional Dungeons and Dragons, right? It is the feeling of Europe and medieval and all of that kind of stuff. But we have a group that I've been working with many people know, quite a number of people know, that we are working on Sundestia, which is going to be steeped in African culture and African mythology and Egyptian culture and Egyptian mythology, right? And then even in Near Eastern, right? India and those kinds of places that we're.
Okay, so we're dipping that far.
Yes. So even though because we really have 4 major continents, and really, if you think about our mythology of Verdestia, it is a mashup of all kinds of Europe, right? It goes all the way.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely Europe consistently across the board.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, we wanted monsters that were appropriate kind of for that mythology, so that when people actually traveled to a new place, they would experience new creatures and new things that were, so you don't have a bunch of sort of Rakshasa and Jinn and those kinds of things running around Verdestia. Right. There may be a few there, right? Because people import them, right? But for the most part, we wanted to keep that steeped in European mythology and sort of that kind of thing. And so
I think it's amazing, and I feel bad because I think we're on the cusp of it, but I think we're not gonna beat it to the forefront. I think we're going to do an amazing job with it when we launch it, but I don't think we're going to beat it as the forefront, because I've already seen some of the new D&D stuff coming out from Wizards of the Coast, and they're starting to do that exact thing. They're starting to push into those different cultures. But I think that's just the whole idea of the branching out of culture in general that Dungeons and Dragons has been able to do. And now we're seeing writers and creators and stuff like that, bringing those ethnicities and culture and religion and all that stuff and just the change in how life is in those cultures is going to be interesting. It's the Bright Citadel, or I'm going to mix it up. Crystal Citadel, I think, is the one that they just released, and it's all that. It's mostly African culture based, so it's but ain't gonna beat writing with 60 people that know African culture. It's just not gonna happen.
Oh, and the wonderful thing is our group that we have with Stefan, and Stefan is getting his PhD, I believe, in sub-Saharan African culture.
Right. Yeah.
And he also has a lot of information about Egyptian culture. But we also have Anthony in there, who is marvelous, and he is helping us. And we have Devin and AJ and Nick and Chris, and it really is coming together quite nicely.
And as I tell people, I'll find a way in. I'll find it. I don't know how yet, but I'll find a way.
We had to put it a little bit on hold because of all the stuff we're doing, but that's okay.
Yeah.
These things will come in their own good time.
Right.
And that is fine. That is just fine.
So, since this is because we have such a big group, and like I said, throw questions at this man. This man has over 40 years of D&D experience. Throw all the questions you have at him, and I'll answer them too if I can.
Just make sure you put them up in here, James, because I'm trying not to watch the Twitch. So
okay, yeah. If I see what pops up, I'll just say them out loud, because it's usually what I do, so people know. But yeah, no, I'm curious. What is one thing as a new game master that you would say is the biggest help to starting an adventure?
So, I have a particular bent, right? Which now. I mean, everyone knows that,
yeah.
that I believe in preparation.
Yes, you do. Well, there I became the ghost now. Give me a second.
Nice. That's just beautiful. I love that. That was marvelous. I have never not been one who prepares, and I believe, as I've said many times, I think there are marvelous people out there, and I frankly can improvise. I think with many, I think I am quite good at improvisation.
Right.
But
I saw that. Hold on. Let's hit this on the target, right? The reason I'm going to just announce this real quick. So at Gen Con this year, we're setting up for the Great GUI Game Show, and Saturday morning built an entire Dwarven Forge structure at 7:00 in the morning. We're supposed to start at 10, I believe. Mm-hmm. At about 9:45, he goes through and labels every single room and the 4 choices they have without ever looking at those rooms beforehand, and I was just blown away.
Well, in fairness, though, the Great GUI Dungeon Game Show is kind of linear, and it
is. But the fact that you literally named like 18 rooms in 15 minutes, like it was just like, what can I name this? Okay, go. And I was like, it was just, I could see the experience that like immediately come off of with that point.
Speaking of improvisation, James, right, is part of the game. There is no question, and you have to be ready because your players take you down tracks that can be wonderful, and if you don't dance with those tracks, the game is not as robust. It's not as beautiful. But if you prepare and then also, right, and you kind of know what your main plot is, because you were telling a tale, right? This is what makes it the greatest, right? If you want to play combat, right, if you're just a combat person, go play some war games. There are wonderful ones out there, that are just magnificent. But if you want to be immersed in a tale and have mystery and intrigue and all of these things that go on, you kind of got to work on that, you got to kind of get it, so you asked the question of what do I think new game masters should do? I think they should buy our materials, because our materials are designed to help make game masters, help them be better, right?
Correct.
And I apologize for the shameless commercial, but that was the goal, right? The goal was to make materials that would help new game masters be better, and bring materials to the table that would help game masters who've been playing for many, many years cut their prep time dramatically and still give them this wonderful, robust tale. And
the artwork and the scenes and all that stuff really does benefit that. Oh, and we have a bunch of questions. Hold on. All right. So first question, what is the best BBEG villain that you have ever used? Who is your who's your big bad evil guy that
Well, I mean, it's
has
good.
you have a heart
There was a
heart
guy
for?
named Nelka Nakelbar. There was another one named Professor Necphilius, who was not good at all. And there were quite a few of them. We brought Zastam in long ago because Zastam was marvelous, from the
Yeah,
Forgotten Realms.
from the
But
Forgotten
I would
Realms.
say
Yeah,
right now, in my humblest, honest opinion, that my most favorite two big bad evil guys right now are Zoldathran Vildreen and the wonderful Lich Lord Kalnovik. One, of course, being played by Joshua, and the other one being played by Alexander. Right,
right.
because I think they are both Eternic mages. Right,
Hmm.
they both transcended the Woe of Ruin, and of course the real terrible secret of the Supreme Consorts is that they take blood touched people and take an essence out of them that keeps them young and keeps them healthy and does terrible things to the blood touched people. And of course, our marvelous Kalnovik wants everybody to be undead, right? So this is this is magnificent tale, right? So my two most favorite big bad
Yeah.
evil guys are those two.
Yeah. Now I will say that I have a personal preference in the ones that I say right now, just because of their absolute scare feel to them. The Tha'ul are probably one of my favorite monsters I've ever utilized.
I should
Partially, I
have
love
I
the
should have
Mind
given you
Flayer.
that picture. I should have given you that picture of the rite of devouring, shouldn't I? But keep going.
Oh, I guarantee I have it. Give
So
me a darn
so
second.
while you're digging, right? So the Thule, you said this was my problem. My conundrum was that in the open game license, we can't use mind flayers,
Right,
and I like them a lot. I don't love them for some reasons, but I like them a lot. And so the challenge was, how do you come up with something that is as good or maybe better, right?
right.
And that was when the Thule came to our minds, and then how do we make them really frightening? And that was of course the beginning. And of course in Shadows and Genzicon, which is the module we just released for Gen Con, um,
Right.
the Thule make their first appearance in the
And I
world.
haven't even like I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I bought that sucker. It is wrapped up and in my set over there. I haven't even taken the time to look at it yet. I'm so excited to dive into it. But it
Well, you
has
might want to keep
been
it wrapped, James. That one has, because that has some special portraits in there that
yeah. No,
there's, there's
we had some
probably there's, yeah,
opportunities with that one.
yeah, no more than 500 of those, I think, in the world, James.
Yeah.
Maybe that have Peters and David's and Marion's and Derek's and Megan's portraits in there. And unless they allow us to release it again next year, which they might at Gen Con to do it as a backup, right? But
Right.
I did get permission, I think today. I was talking with them to do a sequel at next Gen Con, and so I'm excited to bring that next year to the marvelous convention that they bring to us every year as the gaming community.
Nice. Yes, I'm gonna pull I can't get the
Oh,
right
you got
which
Kalnovic up there. I see that. I'm bouncing now. I kind of shut down the Twitch so that I can
oh,
actually
you're fine.
learn.
Yeah, no, we
What
have
am I? About 10 seconds behind you? 15 seconds behind you?
I think it's a 5 or 10 second delay going from us to Twitch. But no, I like I said, I like Kaunovic. I really do. I think I don't really consider him a big bad evil guy in some cases though,
Well,
which
all of
I
our
really do. Now, here's the interesting thing with that though, because I believe that is what makes a really big bad evil guy more exciting when there's that gray area. There's that bit of humanity that you're kind of questioning. Do I murder this man relentlessly, or is there something about him that kind of gives me that hold back motion? When you read the story of Kaunovic, I was kind of in that mode. I'm like, would I really kill this guy though? Like he's weird and there are things that I don't like about him, but Yeah,
Well,
no. Now,
great characters, right? When you're trying to tell a tale, character development, not just for your protagonists are important, your antagonists are important as
mhm,
well, right? And and the fact that most evil people don't really perceive themselves as evil. I don't think. Again,
correct. And it's creepy because normally those are the ones that can convince others that they don't see themselves as evil.
correct.
And
That's
that's
right.
dangerous.
Yes, that's right. That's how this is how things happen that are not good, right?
Right.
But
Let's
yes,
see
he is
here.
very complex.
Yeah.
Kelnervik has lots of layers, right? Which is wonderful, just like
Yeah.
Zoldathan does. Zoldathan just wants to see the spells of the 10th, 11th, and 12th cycles restored. Zoldathan believes that the best years of the world are ahead of us, and he believes that he is the person to do it. He actually is a little deluded in that he thinks he is the Evova reborn, right? And this is his this
Yeah,
is
that's
his
a little more on my side of you need to go away, bro. But how do you okay, got another question. This one's from Shadow Lantern 193. It says, how do you balance combat with puzzles and keeping oh, hold on, it bounced on me. Where'd that go? Um, how do you balance combat with puzzles and keeping encounters challenging?
Mm. So I will tell you some secrets right now. Is that there is no encounter that you encounter at my table that is not variable at any time, and I am not going to have a big bad evil guy go down in one shot because
I
of one,
agree.
and I'm also not going to have my party get wiped because they happen to have. Here's the thing that everyone needs to understand. Listen, this is the truth, right? If you know anything about math, you've heard me say this before, James. If you know
Yep.
anything about math, you know that the game master is like the casino and the players are like the players. They
Right.
have one character, right? And the casino has unlimited monsters, unlimited things to throw at the players.
Hmm.
Statistics will tell you that over time, every party will
Ooh.
wipe. Every party is going to wipe, they're going to die. And so your job is to make it as challenging as possible, right? To make it fun for the players. Hopefully not wipe them too often, right? It has happened at my table, right? It has happened. But generally I try to make that part of the story rather than having it be the end, right?
Now wait, when you say like I'm saying I understand a character might fall down, hurt himself, be almost dead. When you say wipe, how many times have you legitimately killed an entire party at your table?
So I can't say honestly ever entirely the entire party, right?
Yeah,
Because usually I try to give a path, right?
a path
And
out.
yes, now there has been two times that it kind of went that way, and we played it into the tail, and
Yeah.
it
In
moved to.
40 years though, two times, I think that's a pretty good record. I'm not
I'm
gonna
not a
lie.
killer game master,
Yeah,
all respect to Gary Gygax, that is not my style,
right. And if
and
you're not playing, like my personal opinion is if you're not playing for money or time, there's no reason to slay my character or my players. I actually have a coworker of mine who, when he first found out I was into Dungeons and Dragons, he immediately was like telling me all these crazy things that his party did and all the crazy things that he's done in his group, and I'm like, that's so cool. And he's like, yeah, he goes, my game master just doesn't like me though. And I said, why is that? He's like, I've had 6 characters. I was like, excuse me? Like, I might kill off a character one time during a campaign, and that's if they're in a very tense moment or I can really make it feel epic. It brings that tale forward. Um,
real
and
quick, can I give you a wonderful tale?
Sure, go for it.
Wonderful tale. So I basically put the players in the Kobayashi Maru scenario. I did it on
Okay.
purpose. I had a
Yeah.
plan to bail them out at the last moment with another group of adventurers that was going to come save them, right?
Oh, nice.
And they were actually facing the famed Zastam in this situation, but in the guise of a different individual. All right. And they were getting some terrible things happen. That was also the night that one of my friends threw his dice at me and called me an asshole. So that was one of those nights, you know. So I got
Nothing
this
wrong with
plan,
that.
right? I've got this plan. I think this is how it's going to work out, you know. But again, you know, they have a chance to beat him. They have to roll, but they have a chance, right? Well, it starts going bad, and you can see it's going bad. And one of my players, Mike, your friend, right? My son, right?
Yeah.
Uh, uh, has a staff, a very powerful artifactual staff. Because obviously you're fighting Zastam, you better be tough, right?
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah,
he,
no. For anybody who doesn't know, Zastam is the original. He's the Lich for the Red Wizard of Thay, correct? If
that
I'm
is correct.
following this right, yeah. There's my Forgotten Realms lore that I remember.
So Mike's character, whose name is Dunil, um, rushes Zastam full sprint, right,
It's a brave man.
and and breaks his staff. And
Okay.
this was a most crazy circumstance and scenario that I was not prepared for. And so so Zastam uh, uh, was able to get out at the last second, though took horrible damage. But
Mhm.
of course, Mike's character Zodrin was destroyed, and a number of other members of the party were injured gravely, along with two of them already being down already. So it was pretty
It's a
epic, right?
brutal battle for
Yeah.
sure.
But this is where this is where the players telling the tale with you becomes marvelous, right? So we did that. We had it finish up. Everybody was all sad because they like Zodrin. He'd been around for a long time, right? This is a character who's venerable now at this point, right? And everybody's upset. And the other adventuring party comes in and is able to save the ones that were down and help them. But of course, we've lost a very, you know, very wonderful player. So at the end of the night, I went back and I thought about it, and I ended up taking Zodrin, and Zodrin went to the plains, right? And
Oh,
Zodrin
nice.
met a marvelous character in the Forgotten Realms whose name's Saloon, and
Mhm.
Saloon was killed by a dragon. And Saloon and a couple of gods said, "It's not your time." And Saloon kissed Zodrin on his head, on his forehead, and he woke up in the room all by himself, in that room all by himself.
Right.
And from that point forward, a lot of things happened that were tied into that tale, that then fed into the major tale, right? And this is why you can't just take a track, right? You have to be able to dip and dodge. What is that thing from Dodgeball? Dip, duck,
Tip,
dodge.
dive, dodge,
That
duck.
thing, right? Dodge, dodge, and dive. Yes, if you could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball, right? That was the idea.
Can you
So,
imagine getting a wrench thrown at you at full speed and
so
trying
I
to
haven't
dodge
answered
it
the
though?
question though. I want to answer this question. So the question was, how do you balance? So I want to tell you this.
Right.
I really, and having done this for so long now, I truly believe in my heart of hearts that you don't always have to use a combat to gin up the energy around the table. A mystery, discovery, finding something that is meaningful, or finding something that they don't even have a clue what it is, can get everybody kind of going, what the heck, right? And this is why you want to try. Puzzles are less important for me than discovery of interesting things, right?
Mhm.
I do puzzles, absolutely. But I would say my games tend to run about 30% combat or so, 35% combat, maybe about 20% puzzles, maybe
Mhm.
30% sort of discovery and mystery, and then another 20%, I think that come close to 100%, another 20% just reaction to what players are doing.
Right.
All of that stuff kind of makes this marvelous stew of the tale.
Yeah.
And I really, I can't tell you, I need to do more game master tips. I just haven't had time. But I've seen a table go from kind of, you know, kind of feeling a little, you know how the energy goes. You're playing for 6 hours, 7 hours, and
Right.
it kind of goes down. And I've seen a table go all the way to 10, right? Just because they found this weird thing that was like,
Right.
is it right? And all of a
Yeah,
sudden
you
they're
kind
talking.
of trigger that interest for them, and then and I'll tell you people that for my tables normally, Where I will see the biggest reaction is when I've done something that triggers somebody's backstory or something that they've already proved interest in. If somebody's looking for a, you know, their thought process is, I want to get stronger as a magical wizard, and they've come across this cracked amulet in an old ruin, they're going to take all the energy that they can to figure out what this thing is, and that brings out a whole spew of things because now they have to find out how to fix it. They have to find maybe if it needs to be re-energized, or where it might send them or could take them, or what it's about. And I love tying characters into the story instantly with things like that, because I think
Jay,
that's
let's
when
go
you
back
see
to
them.
the earlier conversation, the earlier
Yeah,
question was, what advice do you give players, or sorry, new game masters?
yeah,
Bring your players' tales into the tale.
agreed.
Absolutely make it part of it. And it is not that hard, right? And it doesn't have to be their
Yeah,
story, right?
right,
You get a chance to act upon their story once they provide it, right? And
right,
so, and the discovery of that is really wonderful, right? When they tell you that they have an enemy that, did something bad to them in the past,
right.
and then that enemy shows up, right? That is a moment, right? That is a
I
memorable
did
moment.
that. I did that in one of my parties groups because he was like, they were pretty much, he was a fallen paladin, and he fell because of something that he had seen, and the order that he had believed was not as good as he believed they were actually showed up at the temple. And I've never seen a character go from just sitting there talking to certain characters and then seeing out of the corner of his eye and rushing this character. He didn't know what level he was. He didn't know nothing about the character. But when I mentioned a name and a little bit of a description, he bolted at this character, mace swinging and everything. It was incredible. I was so psyched to see that happen. So, um,
Well, that is a big part of the game. That a big
yeah,
part of the game is helping your players' characters really come to life, right? And really
agreed.
structuring adventures around those things. And can I talk a little bit about the illusion of choice? Because I think this is a very, very big deal.
Darn it. So what I was gonna name this show tonight was the illusion of choice, because it's something you and I have talked about for so many conversations. Before we do that though, I want to make sure we answer Belinda Bennett's question.
Hello,
Uh,
Belinda.
what is the most interesting strategy that an adventuring party came up with that you thought, no way is this going to work, but it did?
Well, okay, so corruption plays a big deal in our world, right? But this has its roots in the past, right? And I had set up this place called Dragon Mountain, which was an adventure from Wizards of the Coast. Um,
Mhm.
and really a wonderful adventure. But I always have to fart around with these things. I
I
just
don't ever use an adventure the way they're supposed to be. I haven't even used our adventures in GUI Cube the way they're supposed to be ran. I
you
always
shouldn't.
am
Yeah,
manipulating.
you shouldn't. Absolutely. And besides, it's so funny because I'm reading in the chats and I'm reading people's different tales, how different everything turns
Oh
out,
yeah,
except for 75% of people burn down the butcher house, right? That's
yeah. I mean, there's certain things that you're like, it's got to go.
so I had created this my own Dragon Mountain, um and they had to go in there and deal with Ilfarana. All right. And they had come to the door where they were going to go in, and there was a ton of Ilfarana's servants that were out there, and they said, "You cannot pass, right? And we're going to have to kill you, right? This was the idea,
Yeah.
unless you have the secret pass."
The secret
Well,
pass. Yeah.
yes, the secret pass was one of Ilfarana's scales. Now, and they knew this; they had learned this, but they only had one scale in the whole party. And I
Right.
thought, oh, they had to get, because honestly, I wanted to soften them up a bit before they went and fought Ilfarana, because they were pretty tough, right? So I get a note passed to me saying I cast illusion, right, an illusion spell, which I said, okay, and then I had to take that player to the side. I said, what illusion are you casting? Well, all of us have Ilfrana scales in our hands right now. So they were able to bypass about 60 of her servants and go right in and do a lot of damage to Ilfrana. And that was when I thought that they could really not get through. But then they had to go down beyond that after they got Ilfrana dealt with and dealt with the real problem, which was Ilfrana was corrupted. And
Okay.
down in the depths was all of this fearful, corrupted stuff. And they ended up going down there, and they just had 2 nights of just incredible rolls, great thinking, excellent strategy. And I was kind of a little pissed at the end, because it was, I mean, it was still challenging, but it wasn't as
But
challenging.
it wasn't as challenging as you wanted it to be.
But it was
Especially
still
if you've been building up, especially if you've been building it up for like a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're getting to that point of tension where it's going to be huge, and they just wreck. I'm like, so
But
that is the one thing I should have done better. And I'll admit it, is like when we're on stream, sometimes I'll let the die roll where they are. Man, I'm telling you, the first episode that we did that I did that very focused wise, was the episode where they were dealing with they were in the hospital, and they were getting the pregnant women were being taken by these assassins, and our friend Matt, the wonderful Del Air, decided to start calling them the sad assassins because I couldn't hit for anything that night at all, and it was pissing me off so badly. But
well, we know it happens like that, right? But
it
again,
does,
this is the casino thing. But
right?
the tale
Not
that I
my
want to
night.
write eventually is my players, um, took the guise of an evil adventuring party, and there was ways because I never liked auto detect evil, and I never liked auto detect magic and these kinds of things because they take away mystery from the game. So we
Right.
have all kinds of ways that you could overcome, because I figured anyway it would make sense if you knew that in those days anti-paladins, we call them depravants, but in those
Yeah.
days anti-paladins could detect good at will, right, whenever they wanted to. It makes sense that magic users and enchanters would figure out ways to overcome that, right? And so
Right.
we had, all of our party was equipped with these magic items that allowed them to deceive anyone who detected them. But they had to literally infiltrate this evil town, and it was not. This is not go in and fight. This is, you better go in there and you better use guile, and we had 3 or 4 nights, 5 nights where there was no combat virtually at all, where they were infiltrating, figuring out things. There was a little bit of combat, but not much. And they were marvelous. I cannot tell you. I really want to. This is an adventure I want to bring to the table, because Mike still to this day swears that series, that time, was one of the best adventures that was ever run at our table. So I got to bring that one of these days.
That sounds like fun.
So Belinda, that Ilfrana thing was quite amazing. But honestly, what they did in that town, they were able to take out the evil Baron and not get caught doing it. They were able to make friends with the second in command, who wanted the Baron's job. And so now they were really in with the big bad evil guy, right? They were totally in because they took out the bad guy, right? His rival, right? But that was where Professor Necphilius was, and there was all these really evil, terrible characters, and they just did a fantastic job.
Yeah, no, I agree, Ace Overton, that tension is just as good as combat. My
Sometimes better, bro.
Yeah, no, I'll admit most of my players, and I'm a very I tell my players up front, I was like, we will play either 1 to 2 games before we hit a combat. Um, I don't do combat every session. I don't do combat, you know, twice or 3 times a session. I think combat drags down the story sometimes. I think it's not. Um, Now we have come up with ways to speed up combat, to make it more intense, to make it more exciting for players. But the tail, like you said, is where everything grows. And as soon
What
as you
brings
can
them
find a
back to the
way,
table? It's what brings
yeah,
them back to the table. They want to know
right,
what's, just like reading a good book or watching an intense movie.
right,
You want to know what's going to happen next, right? And
yeah,
that's what brings you back, not the fact that you kicked butt on a bunch of kobolds, 6 weeks in a row. This is, I
yeah.
mean,
if that's what you're into, that's one thing. Um, and like I have a one party. My Tuesday party is they love combat. Like I have to make combat difficult every time we run a combat because they're very intelligent, very strategic people. Um, but a lot of times I think the stories that they've come back and said they've enjoyed the most is when they're looking for something or when they finally get to a point where they're like, okay, this piece of the puzzle of like this discovery has finally clicked. So I only do combat when it is a part of the story. No, I agree. Um, I completely agree. I only do combat when it's a part of the story. I try to give my players those 6 second rule. Uh, I don't do it all the time. I think, but if my players are really starting to strategize in between combat, I might cut people off.
No, I say it all the time. Quick or you stand there dumbfounded and you lose your initiative. I say it all the time. That is my
Oh,
line.
really? That's your
Yeah,
line?
Matt Mercer's is how do you do this, right? Mine is quick or you stand there dumbfounded. Yes, that is my
Quicker you stay there dumbfounded. I like it.
line.
Into fighting during infiltration, you've already lost, no surprise left, and the big bad evil guy brings everything he's got. No, you're right. Jim, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what happens. If you're trying to infiltrate something and it fails, everybody comes to the rescue. Or
That was the fear, right? They're in this damn town, and there's no way you're dead,
yeah,
right? And I made that very clear. I said, listen, you guys, this strategy, because it was their strategy. They wanted to
right.
infiltrate the town. That's what began the whole thing, right?
The
Was
whole
this
tale,
strategy.
yeah.
And I said, just be clear. This is a very risky strategy. Okay, there's a lot of risk associated with it, and I will be my considered game master personage that I am. But you do something really stupid,
And you'll
and
most likely die.
yeah,
You know?
this is potentially a party wipe, or at least a significant number of your party going down. So
Yeah,
they were on edge and the whole time, but they did so well.
yeah.
I just it was amazing.
No, I agree. Still to this day, and our tech Eric, and I know he's in the channel with us, but still to this day, I think my favorite campaign mission that we've done so far, or story arc, was definitely the werewolves versus the vampires. Uh,
A little bit of
the
Twilight. Yes.
kind of more so they it was more so a twist of trying to think of the bad guy off of Full Metal Alchemist, where they found that there were these refugee camps of people outside of this town, and everybody thought that they were horrible being creatures, but actually the lycanthropes were all sentient. They understood how to do it. They could transform back and forth at will, and they were able to do so. Um, but they were being told by the town, the townspeople were being told that they were all horrible, horrible creatures. But what was happening was the priest of the town was actually a drow uh, vampire that would take people and start to manipulate and experiment on them, but didn't find out that, and then covered it up by stating that they were being taken by the creatures
Of
outside.
course. Yes, yes,
Uh,
yes.
and it took them a good probably 6 to 8 episodes before they started piecing some of the strangeness together and going, hold up. That was also one of my favorite moments I got to use with a character too. We had a character die very early in the game, and I asked him if he wanted to come back, and he said he wanted something different. So we actually did a dice roll. I made 4 choices. He came back as a different class. And in uh, the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, they have something called the Echo Knight, which is you being able to pull fragments of yourself from different parts of time. And he decided that he was going to play an Echo Knight, so he was actually the Echo that was pulled into while he was killed off. Well, the witch doctor was a not were raven, were vulture, and she could mess around with understanding the purposes between life and death and things like that. And right there at the beginning of that arc, we found the the fighter came up to her and was like, "Hey," and she could see immediately that he wasn't who he was supposed to be, and she casted greater restoration on him, and immediately combined both people together. So for like 2 episodes, he played this schizophrenic paladin versus fighter, and it was an amazing moment. Like I
Sort of
said,
like
we had a
when
lot of
Captain
fun.
Kirk got separated in one of the original Star Trek episodes. He got broken
Yeah,
into the confident, kind of arrogant and mean Captain Kirk, and
yep.
the gentle, kind Captain Kirk, right? Who was kind of a mousy guy. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
So
no,
are
it
there
was
other
but that
questions
was probably my
answering?
favorite. Let's see. Did we miss any questions? If we missed a question, make sure that you're putting question in all capital letters and putting the question again so we catch it. I think I've caught them all.
Well, I
Da-da-da-da-da.
will tell you, one of the goals with the Red Star Rising campaign was to
Sure.
truly bring epicness, right? That was the idea, right? And
And you guys do that really well with those first 3 levels too.
thank
Because
you.
I will say I've never been a slow leveler. I don't consider myself a fast leveler. I like my players to understand the abilities they have and seeing them used during the story before I start saying, okay, it's time to start moving on. But at the same time, some of those little bonuses that you guys give during the first 3 levels are pretty unique,
Well, it
and I
didn't
like
make any
that.
sense to me that you're, and they fixed some of this with fifth edition, right? But when you
With
go
which
back
one?
with fifth edition,
Yeah,
right? But when you go back in the old days, and by the way, that's why we have all the art. We have all the art because the old days, a lot of wonderful modules had wonderful art in them, right? We just put it on steroids, right? But in the old days, it took a while for you to get from first level to second level. And it was meaningful every time you leveled. And I really did not, this whole thing with how do we get through first and second level really fast and just be done with them, right? When you're, those are the most formative levels of a character, right? And
yeah.
they're also really the most challenging. I mean, let's speak the truth, right? You don't have a lot of hit points. You don't have a lot
You
of
don't have
power.
a lot of hit points, and I think and mind you, we know that. I mean, you know better than I do, but the power creep from what levels 1 through 3 are now compared to what they were in second and third edition are tremendously different.
They're
Uh,
very different. And the thing is that for me, it also never made sense why spellcasters had like one spell, and then they didn't even, in the old days, they didn't even have cantrips other than like they get 3 of them, right? And then they throw daggers for the rest of the adventure, which was kind of boring for anybody who was a spellcaster, right?
yeah,
And clerics, one of the reasons why fifth edition eliminated clerics, which they really did with short rests and healing potions and all that stuff, was because I know that Hasbro did focus groups, right? I'm an advertising guy. That's my real job, right? And I've done many focus groups, right? I've done a lot of stuff, right? And they talk to people and like, well, clerics are boring. Well, the thing is, that's why we did what we did in our adventures too, which gives the clerics the opportunity to be healers, but also to be able to affect combat and to be able to affect the game in other ways. And this to me is a much greater improvement than just resting all the time. I find resting incredibly boring. Fight a monster, take a rest. Fight a monster, take a rest. It's just yeah, I don't know.
uh, yeah. So I don't allow my. I tell people immediately. I'm like, if you're going to take a long rest, that's the one for the 20 for the day. You don't get 2 long rests in a day. It doesn't make any sense. Um, but I also, like you said, it's one of those things where you either are going to be challenging. The combat's either going to be super challenging at one point of the day because you're going to have it no matter what. And we lost him again. Oh, and he's back. Or you're going to burn out the resources slowly until they're gone. Um, yeah, I can see that's how. Yeah, I can see why chapter one was. I like personally playing chapter one as 3 days
Yes.
But that
2 or 3
allows
days.
me.
That was a mistake. When we originally did it, we did it over 1 day. That was a mistake. We changed that now, as you know, and
Okay,
we
yeah.
encourage people to do it over 2 or 3 days and let it play out more. Because honestly, for a game master too, that gives you a chance to add a couple little of your own salts,
Yeah.
right? Stew, right?
Yeah, and like I said, if you can see it because I mean, if you've not played Red Star Rising Chapter One yet, um, kind of take this with a grain of salt and don't remember too much of it because I don't want you to ruin anything. But you know, you can take the well counter as 1 day. I'd love to just give the players that 1 day of being Zati. You know, let them roam the thing for a day and let them see what it feels like to be a part of the carnival for a day, and then either at the end of that day or at the beginning of the next day bring in the tower or the hole,
The well.
um the well.
Yeah,
So
and
I think
the thing is,
those.
this another thing that we did that people keep mentioning to me. They're like, my players get to and I apologize, I'm giving away a spoiler here, but my players get to this door that's down underneath the well, right, and they can't get through it.
You're right.
And in most adventures, right, if there's a door, there's a way to get through, right? Well, the
Right.
truth is, you ain't getting through that door until this chapter 6, and that, you know. And now I do this regularly at my table, right, because I have people revisit places all the time. You go
So
back and
that
forth.
was, well, you and I know that was the challenge you wanted to put on me for Witch's Wrath, because that was the main focus. You said, hey, in chapter 3 we're going into the forest. I want you to you know, re-attack the forest. You know, what happens after? And for people who have not played the Witch's Wrath yet, play it after, probably after chapter 4. Truthfully, would probably be your best option.
Yes, it stands alone just fine, but it's
Mhm.
perfect after chapter 4, right? It's
Yeah,
just right. It's
give
just
enough time. Give enough time to be out of the main problem that happens at the end of chapter 3. I'm not saying anything, but after chapter 3, do chapter 4. That way, you've stepped away from all of that for a few sessions. Well, I
you
mean,
might have to
technically,
do chapter
what?
5. You might have to do chapter 5 too, because
Maybe, yeah,
you kind of get stuck there.
yeah. You kind of get stuck there. So yeah, um,
But yes, you want to do it later. That's exactly
yeah. You
right.
want to do it later if
But
you
what a
can.
what an interesting thing, right? To go back and
Yeah,
revisit this place where it's different, right?
yeah.
And again, this is something that I just love. I love the idea that time does pass in the game, and that people can, and rather than, sort of running from one place to the next place to the next place to the next place to the next place, which is very fairly typical, right? I think in
Right.
a lot of adventures, to actually go. I mean, there's all kinds of surprises coming in chapter 6 and chapter 7, right, when we finish the campaign, and
Mhm.
people are gonna. I think people are gonna be like blown away. At the end of chapter 3, there's this terrible tragedy, and I won't go into that, but yes, there's
Oof.
a whole. It's a great story arc. It is. It is.
It
I'm
is.
extremely proud of it.
Yeah, no, and I really enjoy it. I've ran chapter 1 a couple times now. I've not taken a party starting into chapter 2 yet, and that is kind of something we've been questioning doing. I might do exactly what Corey says though, and we aren't going to probably run that as a full campaign until I have all the books.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to ruin I want to know what the end of the tale is so that I can make sure whatever I need to weave into it doesn't mess with that ending of the tale. So,
I don't believe you could. That was the structure of it, right? The idea was
right.
to get room to be able to do that, and
Yeah.
as long as you don't play too much with major characters, right? As long as
Right.
that too much, you got a lot of room to move. And of course, we railroad the heck out of them in chapter 4, right? And again, this is another thing that I want to tell you, game masters out there. Railroad is not a bad word. It is not. It is not. It is unfair for people to kind of make it an elite thing that you railroad players. In any kind of a great tale, bad things happen to protagonists that they don't want to have happen to them, and they can't stop it. It is just part of the tale. And so do not be afraid sometimes that, now it has to be reasonable. It has to be fantastically plausible that this is happening to them, right? Otherwise, then they feel like you're just making them do something, right? but there has to be rationale and reason and all of that stuff in the background of why they're ending up wherever they're ending up that you're making them go. But if it's reasonable, and honestly, if it plays into the tale, they'll probably love it. So, again, this whole thing of if you don't improvise everything, you aren't a great game master, right? If you don't prepare like crazy, you aren't a great game master. Neither of these things are true. They're neither
Right.
true. And there's no need for this sort of elitism that kind of goes on, because the fact of the matter is, if it's great for your table, that's all that matters. If your players are loving it, if they're having a great time, if you're having a great time, that's all that
Yeah.
matters.
Oh, agreed, 100%. Um, Not to mention, I think the biggest weirdness of railroading, and somebody told me that, is when you're taking players' reactions away from them. I think that when you're taking the players' abilities to do things away from them, I think is when you are railroading people. But the other question is this, and this is something that we learned. I mean, if you look at any book, you look at any movie, you have to be willing to work with your game master, because if you're not, then the story isn't going to make any sense. So when they give you a plot hook and it's something interesting, take the plot hook. You know, don't always think. And most people, I will admit, I've played, you know, many groups, and I've really never had an issue with plot hooks other than a couple. Um, Now
And
I will
listen,
admit,
great
uh,
players, James, they want to know the tale. They want to
exactly.
with the tale. And the thing is, really, when people
But I guess
are
if you're given bad plot hooks, I mean, maybe at that point you
yes,
have
that
to
could be
look
your
back at
problem then. Yes, that
yourself. You'd be like, hey, maybe these aren't as interesting for my players. Like maybe I need to look at a different way to connect these players.
but I
Um,
do think that there are players at the table who really are just take glee in disrupting. And frankly,
right.
for me,
Yeah.
with all respect, that's not someone I want to have at my table.
No,
It's not fun. It's not fun for the other players. It's not fun for you as a game master.
correct.
I've been fortunate through many tables, many games, that I've really only had a couple of those folks, and
Yeah. And normally they don't stay very long.
they don't. No, they don't. Usually, I
Yeah.
ask them to leave.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but I think they kind of weed themselves out because
They
they
do.
weren't enjoying it. They
Yes,
don't
because
enjoy it then. So
they're not really there to be a part of the game. They're really there
no.
because they want to do their own thing, right? And I always encourage
Mhm.
those people. You should go game master. You should go, try it out for a while yourself,
Yeah.
because then you might get a little dose of your own medicine, perhaps from someone else, and then realize what a crappy thing it is to do. So
Right. No, I completely agree.
for me, the wonderment of the tale, the joy of being with your friends, the joy of watching their characters develop and watching the story develop around them, to modify it when it's necessary because you want to bring other things to the table,
Right.
to that gameplay, all of that stuff. It factors into being really what I consider to be a good game master, right? Because it's not your tale, it's our tale, right? That's the key to the whole thing. Some people say that a game master is like being God. Some people say that a game master is like being a referee. I sort of equate it to being a facilitator, and your job is to facilitate the tale, and not to be too restrictive, but also, frankly, not to be too open. I think that ends up with adventures that kind of go cockeyed and chaotic, and unless you're
Right.
with a game master who's really good at improv, um, that those tend to not last that long.
Right. And I believe even the most impressive of improv actors that I mean, the streams that have, hundreds and thousands of people like Matt Mercer and Brandon Lee Mulligan, you have to look at certain things that make sense though. And if you use those same techniques, it's not needed for improv. If you're getting something, connecting something that is connecting to a player, you watch those players bite those catch those hooks almost immediately, and those are the things they're diving down.
Well, and
And
can I
then you
say something?
tie those into it.
I want to say something about this because because obviously Critical Role is the pinnacle, right? But there are a number of
Right.
others that are out there that do a great job. But if you watch the early episodes of Critical Role, you'll get a much better idea of what they were when they were actually playing versus producing a show.
Right.
And you and I have discussed this, James, that there's a wide gap between running a show and having to produce that and actually playing a game. And
We've learned that. I mean,
the wonderful thing about Critical Role and those others is that so many people have been exposed and seen these wonderful games, and they're playing them with their families and all of that stuff.
right.
But the bad thing about it is everybody thinks they need to be Matt,
Right.
and you don't, and you shouldn't,
No.
because what's going on around that table is not really a game. It's
Right.
not. And in fairness, right? It is a show. It is designed to entertain.
It is
And
a show to entertain.
yes,
And
so
even he has admitted in multiple interviews that he can't wait for the moment where he can turn the cameras off and return to the table with just his friends in a hidden.
there's a
Because you're
lot
right.
of show, man. There's a I'm in that. I told you I'm in the advertising business, right? I've done commercials and all of these kinds
Yeah.
of things, and there is so much planning and preparation and effort that goes into it. And honestly, I'm sure that they have fun doing the show, but I'm not sure they're sitting there going, "Gosh, this was a great game" when they were done, because they're probably, I mean, you can kind of tell when things have been fed ahead of time. You can, some of those things
Yeah.
you can see, right? And again, that's not to throw shade. They are magnificent. What a
Yeah.
wonderful thing they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I just, for all you game masters out there, don't compare yourself to Matt. That is not,
Yeah.
or any of those great game
Yeah.
masters who are running those wonderful streams.
No, that I think those are the few moments where I have to definitely dial back, because as a professional game master, somebody who gets paid to run games for people, every once in a while I'll get that question. Well, are you like, is this game going to be like Critical Role? And I have to tell people immediately, no, it's not. I have not been building. I didn't build a world with 65 people helping me build it. Now, mind you, I can get pretty darn close now with Zioth A, because there's quite a bit of information there. But and I don't have. And the second question I ask immediately is, well, are you like the actors on Critical Role then? Because if you're not bringing that same interested that feel, then I can't give you what they're producing back, because we have to remember that too, is specifically Critical Role. Like I said, the pinnacle of what we see on Twitch right now with D&D, and for sure, but they're all actors. There's not one of them that is not a professional in their field and hasn't been a professional in their field for many, many years. So
no, that's very astute, and I'm refilling my pipe here. Is why I'm.
No, you're good. While you're refilling, we got some new questions. So let's see what we can stir up before we close out for the evening. Is there anything that you immediately ban at your table? Like certain spells, combos, or combos of spells or races?
I have a kind of a standard rule with that is kind of understood, which is that I don't really, min-maxing is not really part of what I want to do. If you're just trying to create a character that's just going to be super OP, and you're going to try to string some spells together and blow up an entire town or whatever, those kinds of things, I tend to frown upon that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, there are consequences to those kinds of actions as well, right? And you're not the only party of stout, adventurers out there in the world, right? There are also, powerful governments, and believe me, if a government wants to take down a party of adventurers, you're going down, right? And so I encourage my players to have flaws. I encourage them. I tell you, I remember a lot of characters through the years that many players have played at my table. But the one that sticks in my mind the most was this halfling wizard named Flavius Milo, who was run by Dirk. And Flavius Milo had a 4 constitution. And he would fall down all the time, and he'd have to carry him and help him along. And it just made for such wonderful engagement, right? Because here was this wizard who could do some things, right? But had this marvelous flaw. And And again, that's part of the tale. Part of the tale is not being super. If you want to play superheroes, play champions, right? In my mind, in my mind, right? But if you want to play in an adventure, a real adventure, think
Right.
about them all. Think about the Lord of the Rings. Think about the flaws in all of those characters. Think about Boromir, right? Think
Right.
about Gandalf himself, right? Who had his own stuff, right? And all of
Right.
that thing. And he was not this all-powerful wizard who could just go and destroy everything, right? He was afraid of the Nazgul, right? I mean,
Right.
this all of this happens, right? And you look at this tale, and then you understand that that is what makes for a better tale. So for me, I always try to encourage my players to be vulnerable, because vulnerability makes the adventure better. And I have never, not really in many years, not really had that generally happen at my table. Very few people try to really min max. They do want to be powerful. Obviously, all of our characters want to advance, but I've never really had that situation where I've done that. And I do encourage you to tell your players to please try to live within that sort of a circle, and try to make that happen, because the game will be better for it.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna plug directly from Ace Overton. You're absolutely right there. You don't want to be these people on stream. It's like, I don't want to be Alphinius Goo as a GM, but I want to learn from him, and I know there's things about his game that I would connect with and utilize and things like that. Um, we have one more question. Now, I think, Belinda, your question was answered through this. How do you deal with people making power builds? And it's more of a, I don't want people to make power builds because I want them to have a flaw that you can either watch them overcome or watch them get, pulled down from. And it's all based on the character's personality and preferences and stuff like that.
And
Now,
James, I want to say this one thing. Belinda, you
yeah,
need to keep this in mind. There is no player that is more powerful than you as the game master. I don't care what they do. I don't care what they bring to the table. You are the casino. They have one character. All right.
right.
So if somebody needs a little bit of humbling, it's okay to humble them. It is
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
especially if they're disrupting the game, right? Honestly,
right.
like I said before, that person might not be so welcome at my
Yeah.
table, right? The problem is if it's your spouse, right? That's when it really becomes problematic.
Yeah.
My husband
That's
is
a different conversation for another time. But no, I agree. Uh, Ace Overton says he likes maxed characters that's part of a team because they then can learn that they also have a team that they can't handle what they have. Oh goodness.
spot
But
on. I know exactly where you're going. That is, the
wanting,
team is
yes,
the thing, right? You
right,
work together in that regard. And that's what makes it so much fun, because one player can save another, and another player can save another, and there's not just one player that's kind of standing in front just destroying everything, and everybody else is sitting around going, well, this is kind of boring. That's the mentality that we want to try to avoid. Anthony, you are
right.
spot on.
No, I agree. And then final question for the night. As soon as I just saw it, it's from Anthony as well. It says, do you use an RP checklist before a campaign to learn a player's limits? You might have to. I
I
don't know
tend
what
to
that
grab,
means.
no, I tend to grab their backstories, but
Okay.
honestly, I don't have players typically do their entire backstory in a vacuum. I tend to influence that backstory. We talk about it a little bit, but also this is really important to me, and really important, I think, for stopping some of the murder hoboism that can happen. Because if you ponder for a moment that you have, and I've said this before to people, you have a rogue from the South whose parents were killed by these terrible orcs that live in the South, and you have the paladin from the North whose church was burned down by all these barbarians, right? And then you have the wizard from the East, right, who wants to get back at his order because they kicked him out, right? And that is impossible to really bring those together well. I
Yeah.
love to have parties that have commonality of relationship and commonality of flaw. Now, the commonality of flaw is a little harder to get to, but if you integrate backstories a little bit, you can begin to build a commonality of flaw. They have their individual flaws, but you can build a commonality of flaw with them as well.
Right.
And if you start with that foundation, the players dance a whole different tune. They to a whole different tune, and they work together better, and do exactly what Anthony was saying, which is more of a team, right? A team concept. We're working together to accomplish a common goal, right? Or a commonality of goals. And that really helps make the game enjoyable.
I like that. And that is a good ending for our show tonight. I thank you, Alphinius, for coming to join us for episode 60. Oh my goodness.
My pleasure, James. My pleasure.
I love the conversations. You and I have had many around tables and, on the phone. But really, this is such a passion of mine to be able to bring amazing game masters and amazing creators onto the show to tell your story, but also just to share some insight that might help you on your next table. So once again, thank you. And for everybody else that's excited, this Sunday we have our next episode of Plots in Darkenhaven, and that will be ran by the all famous Pam, otherwise known as Dulcinea. She's going to be picking up the mantle this week, and we are super excited to see what she brings to the table with our custodians of the condemned, and we're looking forward to seeing that. And then next week, for everybody who's interested, we have, I believe, Keith from Fire and Dice coming on the show next week. Keith he's on Instagram, he's a game master, he's writing his own module right now. And I'm sure once again, we're going to get some cool ideas from him as well.
Well, I want to do one shameless commercial that I can do. All right. So if you have not gotten it, I would highly encourage you, if you got the cash, go buy this limited edition Shadows and Gensicon adventure. I promise you it is marvelous. I promise you it is marvelous. But it is not just marvelous. It is incredibly rare. Like I said to you earlier, James, I don't think there'll be more than 500 of them in the world.
Yeah. Can you toss a link up for that? And I'll toss it up in
just go to gooeycube.com/shop. But after September 10th, we will take out the portraits of Peter and David and Marion and Megan and Derek, and they will be replaced by other characters with the same names, but you won't have those special portraits that are in there. And that's what I think makes it really collectible. By the way, I have a signed copy from Peter, which is magnificent. Yes, I know.
I'm getting mine next year. I missed not getting able to see him this year. But
and what a marvelous man! What a really, truly, and all of the Gen Con team, fantastic.
Right, agreed.
Peter, I'm corresponding with him a little bit, and James, I got some news for you. He comes through Colorado Springs every once in a while, so I think we might actually be getting together and breaking some bread or having a coffee or something.
Awesome. So we've had conversations of him coming on the. I mean, such a cool opportunity, right? To bring people like you and Peter and
don't
some
put
of
me
the
in
other
that
amazing
category, but thank you.
But I mean, you guys, you've put together such an amazing thing with what I would believe an incredible accomplishment, bringing 400 and some people together to write. That does not come easy. I know the work and effort that you put into these things, and it is.
Well, I promise you, James, incredible. It is no passion. It is a work of love. There's no, as you know better than most. This is not a profitable venture for us at this point in time. And
I feel you there.
But that is okay. You know what I'm saying?
It is.
We have day jobs, and the day jobs fund this fun thing that we're doing. And we are going to do another Kickstarter here pretty soon. We're going to get a few more of these things finished. We're very close on chapter 5. We're very close on obviously Magica is going to drop here very, very soon. I'm literally going through the last edits of it. We added some things to the Technic Artificer that I think people are going to really love. We've had some other people take a look at some of our classes just to make sure they aren't, I lean a little OP. So, I like players to be tough. That doesn't bother me at all that they're tough. I just don't want them to be crazy. Right. So there's one thing with the Agent of Jinx that Matt has advised us on that I think is a good change, and some other things like that we're putting these last things in. And then we have some magical flowstone cores and magical what they power cores as well as fusel cores, and we have magical fusels, which and all this stuff. And we will actually release flow blades in Magicka as well, which are made from flow steel, which I think people are going to really like, because I think swinging a blade that scintillates in colors as you swing it is magnificent and interesting. So we'll see how that all turns out.
All right.
But get shots in GenzaCon, my friends, if you have not. I highly recommend it. Like I said, it's worth probably what you pay for it today, but 10, 15, 20 years down the road, maybe you send your kids to college on it. Okay, you probably will never do that. So. But if you're a collector like I am, it's something to go on the shelf.
It is something that goes on the shelf. It's an incredible opportunity. And remember, if you get the digital version, you won't have those 5 portraits, sadly.
Right. The digital version does not have the 5 portraits. It has the replacement portraits. So it's only the physical copy that has
only the physical copy. And on the note of, passion projects, if you are willing to and you have a little extra money, and this is by no point a necessity or a requirement, but we have opened up our Patreon. We drop maps on there every week or so, trying to give back to the community with the maps that we use for plots in Darkenhaven. And it also, you get a little message on at the ending of plots in Darkenhaven, just saying thank you, because since it is a passion project, a lot of the money that we do for artwork and things like that comes out of our pockets, and it can get kind of pricey at times. So
James, we've probably made 1,000 pieces of artwork.
Yeah.
And multiply that by $150 to $200.
Oh yeah, no, I feel you. Just the NPC artworks we did for Plots in Darkenhaven was not super cheap, but we really were excited to have Brina on board with that. And
I love all those portraits. The Sark though is the best. The Sark portrait is my favorite. Yes,
that's
I know.
Me, baby. But no, we're excited to continue that process. But if you would be willing to give us a couple bucks just to help us with that funding, it means a ton to us, and it helps us get those artworks continuously coming out. But yeah, Brina is our guest this week too. She is our amazing artist will be our guest this week for Plots in Darkenhaven. So you'll get to find out what her tale is and her mystery is. So if you haven't checked it out, go check us out on YouTube. All the episodes are up there currently right now. And with that, the tavern's closed. Grab your drinks, raise them high. We'll see you guys all next week for Tavern Talks, episode 61.
Cheers to you, James.
Thank you.